looks like we have a healthy agenda for our hearing on Monday. So let's jump right in. The first thing, item A and item B are both dealing with Bloomfields, and they're both Pam's. So do you want to take those on, Pam?
Yes. The first one is Bloomfield's requesting the architectural package, and both the single family and towns have to meet 5 elements. Single families for Class B, towns Class A, and they have also included a new cottage design for a 2-car garage for single family. They also, for both the towns and the single families, as we discussed at the workshop, they're looking for that 5th element for other things to be approved by the Planning Commission, which was the front facade, high visibility, and the landscaping on lot. And they are proposing to state on the plan and in the HOA docs that the HOA be responsible for that landscaping as a permanent feature. And that is that. They also have to have unconditional approval for for architectural approval. They have to have the preliminary and final site plan, which is item B on your agenda. For that detail for that unit, their previous preliminary plat and site plan did not include the 2-car garage for that single family cottage. And they're proposing to go from, like I said, the 1-car to 2-car garage. And item B for Bloomfield, in regard to that, as we discussed, they're proposing in section 1 about 57 units out of the 310 for that model. And we have given you a demonstration of the plans side by side, and that is it. Or unless you have questions on either item, I kind of threw those together.
Okay, great. Let's do a roll call of the commissioners so they can questions and comments. I know I took note there was at least 3 items that were new since the workshop. Commissioner Beatty.
Commissioner Beatty, I have no questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Manalis.
On mute.
And you're still on mute.
Sorry,
you look
yes. I'm using 2 screens, so it's kind of hard to jump back and forth. Yeah, no comments or questions. Thank you.
Okay. My only question, and I know you addressed this, but it has to do with the 5th element. And on page 7 of the staff report, it says the applicant has put forth other elements for the Planning Commission's consideration. And then they list them: the front facade, streetscape, high visibility plan, and on-lot landscape. Can you address these specifically if you agree that any or all of these 3 are in essence worthy of consideration?
Well, as I said, as for the on-lot landscaping, they are guaranteeing through the HOA that landscaping and your and with their planning schedule that they have provided on the plan, that it would be maintained. So I would say that's somewhat of a guarantee that if you find that's a 5th element, that yes, that would be a guarantee through the HOA. And the high visibility, they gave you, I think, an exhibit that shows where they believe that the corner facades and the front streetscapes facades meets a little bit more detail than that would be required by the elements alone, since most of our elements all address the front facade in regard to like dormers and canopies and so forth. They're looking at the visibility of their side as a corner lot, as I noticed with the high visibility.
But that's only on a few of the units, and we do kind of typically see those. So I guess I'm just saying, as in staff's opinion, do one or more of these actually put the check in the box for the fifth element?
I could agree that the high visibility doesn't include all the units. I would say the landscaping would have to be the fifth unit, since that's going to be guaranteed for all of them.
Okay. Okay. That's what I thought you had said, and I knew that you had said it in your opening, but I don't think I was intently listening as fast. And so thank you for saying that again. That's very helpful.
And we have
anything. Yeah.
Oh, I was just gonna say, just on in general, related to all of the elements, it's an incorporation usually in the design booklet at the master plan where they kind of identify these to apply. It's not necessarily that the same combination of elements are going to comply in all of the unit types. It's that, you know, that not every townhouse has a dormer on it, right? When you see a stick of townhouses, every other one, or, you know, has a different roof form or something like that. So just want to add that.
That's an excellent point. Okay.
They had also included, yeah, Gabrielle's correct there. They've also included, I think, believe in the streetscape statement about colors, and you know, lots of people have the different colors, and saying that they're not going to have two of the same, you know, beside each other, and so forth. So yes, that was their intention.
Thank you. Appreciate the conversation. Anything else from anyone? I'm looking at both commissioners. Okay, terrific. Thank you. So item C is also with Pam, and that is Wren Quarter, combined preliminary plat and final site plan.
Yes, this one is where they're starting to look at across on the south side of Monroe for the phase 3 of the Wren Quarter for 75 units, townhomes, and they're requesting that modification to section 803 for accessory structures, which is actually, which includes the front yard and impervious surface for that driveway as an accessory structure. We discussed that at the workshop, the purpose of this because of the design of mixed use and reduction of lot size and lot width, that the driveway takes up more than the 30% as requirement, and that's part of that modification. And they also are introducing on this plan, combined preliminary and site plan, a new detail for A3E for the townhomes, which will have a one-car garage, and that will also come forward later for your approval as a design booklet and architecturals to be updated for the Wren Quarter. And that was the biggest issue with this one, the modification for that front yard. And that's all I have to really brief you on there.
Okay, thank you. We'll do a roll call. Commissioner Beatty.
Commissioner Beatty, no questions. Thank you.
And Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manalis, just a clarifying question. On top of page 5, I guess, so they're going from a 2-car garage to a 1-car garage, basically, correct?
They are introducing a new model, yes, for a 1-car garage.
Okay. That was all. Thank you.
Okay, and I see that Commissioner McShane has joined us. I do apologize if you were here on the last item, Alderman, but any comments or questions on this item?
Thank you. No comments on this one, and I was on previously, but didn't have any questions at that point either, so no worries.
Okay, thank you. All right. That completes the conversation on item C. Takes us to item D, and this moves over to Sharon Suarez for the, I'm not even going to try to say the name of this, but it's a final site plan.
Andochick, thank you.
Andochick. Okay.
Yes, since our workshop, we have not received any new comments. All the certifications for adequate public facilities have been received. We have full certifications for water line and sewer line, a provisional certification for roads. And interestingly, I think you will be happy, as I was, to find that they have rescinded their request for the modification to interior parking lot landscaping. And that's as a direct result of the discussion at the workshop. So currently, there's only one request, modification request outstanding, and that is for loading space modification. The applicant will be providing the full 10% of the landscaping for the interior parking lot. The two action items that you will be considering then are whether to grant the modification for the minimum off-street loading spaces. As required, as you recall, they are required by code to have two large spaces, one large space for each of the buildings, the one that exists and will be added to, and the one that is yet to be built. And the applicant requested two smaller spaces because the size of the trucks, for any of a number of reasons, reduction in pervious space, the ability to have less vertical clearance to allow for trees and landscaping to grow, unimpeded by a need to prune them or keep a clearance, a 15-foot clearance. And that's it. Oh, the other one is just to approve the final site plan, as we've conditioned that there are 3 minor conditions that have to do with notes. And that's all I have for you tonight, this afternoon, unless you have questions for me.
All right, we will do a roll call. Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manalis, I don't have any questions, just a comment that I was happy to see that it was just one modification and that they changed their minds about the landscaping. So that was great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Beatty.
Commissioner Beatty, yes, I agree, and I have no further questions. Thanks.
And Alderman McShane.
Sorry, Barbara, I didn't quite hear that. Is this available for me,
Oh.
Alderman McShane?
Yes, I was just calling on you with for any questions or comments on this item.
Yes, thank you. I do very much appreciate the change for the interior landscaping so that they will meet that 10% requirement. I did feel that it was important for us to uphold that on this project. As for the modification relating to the loading, I had some concerns about that as well, based mostly on potential future use in out years. We don't know what will happen, but staff's explanation about the likely processes that would have to happen for a repurposing for a different use in the future, put some of those concerns of mine at ease. So I'm happy to have this move forward.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And I don't have any questions or comments. So I
Thank
think
you.
that wraps up this item. And at all times, as we go through the questions and comments, I can keep my eyes on the commissioners. So if they have further questions or comments, just look up. Okay, let's go. Now we're going to item E and F. This is with Sherry Kelly, and this is the junction at 511.
Hello. So just a couple of things to update since the workshop. We in the staff report, you'll see that I did update it to reflect the 2 electric car charging stations that will be provided on the site. And then the stormwater has been approved. There are just a couple of things that will need to be addressed during the improvement plan stage. But as far as the approval of the site plan, everything is good to go for that. And then for the recommendations, we're recommending approval of the modification for the entrances. And then for the approval of the site plan, there are just some notes that need to be updated. And there's one comment from Washington Gas that needs to be addressed. So that's all I have. If you have any questions for that one, and there's nothing new to report on the forest plan. We're recommending unconditional approval of it.
Okay. Thank you. Roll call then. Commissioner Beatty,
Commissioner Beatty, no questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Manalis,
Commissioner Manalas, no questions. Thanks for the updates.
Alderman McShane. Let me let me ask my question, and then we'll come back to Alderman. And this may have been discussed at the workshop, and I haven't had a chance to go through all of the notes from the workshop, so I'll apologize in advance if it was asked and answered thoroughly. Why was not the junction at 511 and the junction at 521 entered as a single, whether it was a master plan or a single project, it's the same owner? Why were they two different projects?
That's a good question. Maybe Gabrielle can elaborate, but I would think that because they're two separate properties that aren't contiguous with each other. Yeah.
Yeah, so under the code, there are only certain types of developments that actually have to come in as a master plan. So when we're looking at planned neighborhood developments, mixed use projects, mixed employment center developments have to come in as a master plan. And TNDs, we don't have are also a provision in the code. So those have to come in kind of as a cumulative project. The code also addresses area plans, which we've never had. We have a small area plan, but this concept's a little bit different. And this is kind of a larger scale than a master plan that might be under multiple ownerships that wanted to come in as one application. So just standard development in accordance with the Euclidean zoning district. So this is DB. It's not subject to any special performance standards or like with the Wren project where you're considering alternatives to the design criteria. This is the same as developing as like an R4 or an R6, you know, kind of base stock zoning district. So there's nothing that requires them to come in as a master plan. And then as Sherry said, you know, they are completely different properties. It is the same ownership, but there's nothing that makes them plan them together necessarily.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you. Is that I still I have a lot of work to do to get up to speed on these. It's these two and the terrace. So I do appreciate that. Alderman McShane, any questions, comments on this item? These items?
Yes, I did have a question. I would appreciate it. Could staff review the current plan for parking and how the number of spaces are fitting into the current requirements for the DB zone?
It does meet the requirements. As you know, for downtown areas, sorry, hold on a second. I apologize. So the requirements for the DB zone and the other downtown districts are they only have to meet half of the requirements. So they actually they do have enough. I was just looking back through the parking requirements here. Let's see. So they have 112 spaces. The minimum is 87. So they do have more than enough spaces to meet the requirements.
Any follow-up questions? Alderman?
No, thank you. That was it. That was my understanding, and I'll have the same question for our next items. But for that one, thank you for that explanation.
Okay. Okay. Anyone else? The commissioners? Any further? All right. So then that takes us to items G and H. Hold on. Which is no, it's just G, and that is the junction at 524.
Okay, so for this one also, the question about the electric charging stations, the applicant is also providing 2 for this site as well. And then for the stormwater, they have met all the requirements and were approved for stormwater. So there won't be any conditions or anything associated with that. For the parking, this is the one where they were requesting the modification because they need 3 additional spaces. They were required to have 48 and 45 are being provided. So they asked for the modification to have 3 spaces located at the project across the street, which is 511. And we are recommending approval for that because they meet all of the criteria that was established for a reduction in parking spaces. And they also meet the criteria in section 309J4, which are the ones that it's not contrary to the purpose and intent of the code, and it's consistent with the comp plan. And they're providing compensating design and features, particularly with the bus stop enhancements that they're providing. So with this one, the conditions of approval that we have are, let me look at these. Just a couple of notes that need to be updated. And that was it for that one.
Okay. Thank you, Sherry. Let's do a roll call of the commissioners. Commissioner Beatty.
Commissioner Beatty, I have no questions. Thank you.
Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Manelli, no questions. Thank you.
Alderman McShane.
Yes, thank you, everyone. I do want to stop back at the modification for parking on this project, because I expressed some concern about it at the workshop. I'm still not all that happy about the project being under the required number of spaces, especially considering that they need to provide only 50% of a normal number of spaces due to the downtown business zone. So as I expressed at the workshop, the reduction is already baked in. They already are well under. I also had a tough time with the explanation that it should be okay to not have to provide the required number of parking spots because they have some spots across the street at their other project. I don't like the fact that we're allowing the 2 projects to combine assets, to combine resources when it comes to parking, but then we're holding the line and treating them as 2 distinct projects when it comes to things like assessment for traffic study impact. That doesn't sit well with me, that, and that's partly in response to some calls that we've received from some residents. Why aren't these projects being considered together? If they were, would they have been over the 50 peak trip increase for traffic studies and required a further traffic study? And we're saying, no, they're 2 separate projects. But now it sounds like we're allowing a modification to the parking requirement and letting them sort of be treated as 2 as the explanation there. So I have some concerns over that, and I do need to hear more about the other conditions and the other modifications that were just referenced in the abstract that they're doing that make this okay. And it's kind of a funny point for me to be sticking on. On the one hand, I feel like it's only 3 spots out of 48. Should we just let it slide? But the flip side of that coin is it's only 3 spots. Should we be granting these variances? They're almost there. It's only 3 spots, and they're already half of what a project would be required in many other parts of the city. So I'm stuck on this issue, which is not huge in the scale of the project. I got a lot of support for the project, but this one I'm still stuck with.
If I could real quick, one, I totally appreciate those comments and the feedback, and we do have to be mindful that we are in the pre-PC meeting. So it's good feedback to express because it allows everyone to understand moving into the hearing. But in terms of kind of, discussing the merits, we need to save that for the big show on Monday night. With that said, I do want to offer just one point of clarification as you think about this over the weekend and as you deliberate during the hearing. The request that they have is for designated spaces in the other parking garage that are not being counted towards the other uses requirement. So it's not, we have provisions for shared parking in the code under section 607. There are allowances that allow like a mixed use building to share their parking so that you figure the restaurant is really busy in the evening, the offices are really busy in the day, and they're sharing the parking. It's co-located and based on different peak hours of the anticipated uses. So there are provisions for shared parking. This is a little different. This project will still be having the minimum required number of parking spaces designated for their site, except 3 of them will be off-site. So those 3 spaces in the conditions that Sherry has in her report about them being explicitly, those 3 spots for that project are on the other property. They're not counted into the minimum parking requirement for the units in the other building. So it's more of a geographic thing than not having the parking spaces. It's just where are they located that you need to think about. In this case, like I said, we shouldn't deliberate too much, but in this case, they are located across the street, compatible or accessible with a parking, sidewalk, crosswalk. So those are the factors that we've looked at. But I just wanted to point out the distinction that there is a little difference between shared parking and this offsite parking modification that's allowed to be requested. They could ask for those 3 spots on any other project as well, any other lot, as long as they meet the criteria for it. So I just want to point out that distinction.
Alderman McShane, any further questions or comments?
Well, I do think that that's an important consideration there, that the spots are not
Alderman McShane, we lost
double
you
count
after.
in order to have these.
You are going in and out. The spots are not, and then we heard double count. Did anybody else hear anything else? Was that me? Okay. And then.
Well, it's all right. I can try to come back if it comes in better.
Okay. And then, as Gabrielle said, and I was going to say this too. Occasionally, we do start to have conversations in these meetings that really are appropriate to have at the hearing. So, but to that, and if this is an inappropriate follow-up question, but I guess especially in listening to the explanation that Gabrielle gave and thinking back with some other examples, would it matter if this was not a property that they owned, but there were spaces available, and it could be on some other property, is what I'm saying. It's off-site. It doesn't have to be on something that they own.
So if it were on another person's property not related to this project, the only difference would be that we would have to make sure, because they're under separate ownership, that an agreement be recorded between the 2 property owners, where the lending property owner commits those spaces to the receiving property owner. So that would be the only distinction. And
I believe we have done that in a handful of cases. So we might want to talk a little bit more about that on Monday.
Yeah, Barbara, if I may, if you're able to hear me a little bit clearer now, I should be able to.
Yes.
Perfect. The explanation there from from staff is helpful, and I do appreciate the fact that spaces to meet the required number for parking are not being essentially double counted. No, because there is excess across the street, and if we were to imagine that was an entirely unrelated project, that's available parking to meet a requirement off-site, and I'm fine with parking requirements being met off-site. It did just get me thinking about how are we treating things in these scenarios as one project, it feels like, in certain areas, but treating them as two projects in some other areas. And to me, that feels a little problematic. I don't know if we are out of line on each separate little modification or consideration or calculation, but together, I think, as I probably stated clear enough, feels like we're picking and choosing a little bit where these are being treated as one and where they're being treated distinctly, and I don't really know how to totally settle that feeling. Thank you.
We certainly can take that conversation up on Monday during the hearing, and then we'll have the benefit of the applicant's response as well as further responses from the staff. Commissioner Beatty, you have your hand up.
Yeah, they're great points by Alderman McShane in terms of treating these as separate until it benefits to look at something to combine. But I understand what we're saying in terms of if this was any other development or any other property that they could enter into an agreement. My question, though, is I seem to remember at the first time we discussed this project that they were in discussions with another property owner for parking. Is that not the case anymore?
I believe they were addressing a parking above and beyond the minimum required. So if they anticipated a need beyond the minimum requirement under the code, they, I think, indicated that they were having maybe those discussions, but not to meet the minimum standard.
I see. So, so in looking at the three that are across the street, that's their solution, and they're not in discussions with anybody else anymore.
No, so the three required across the street are needed to meet the minimum requirement.
Okay, got it.
I think their thought was, if we do find that we need more beyond your minimum requirement, City of Frederick, we would explore other options, or we're talking to other people beyond that minimum requirement.
I understand. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anything else on this? Okay. I know that some of you all and us are freezing in and out, so I think we're doing okay. But Gabrielle keeps freezing, and Commissioner Manalis keeps freezing. So I hope I'm capturing everything. Anyway, that takes us on to the last two items, H and I. Both of these deal with the terrace, and now we move to David.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, fellow commissioners, staff, general public. I guess we can jump in. PC 21-809 FSI for the terrace. The applicant's proposing 300 dwelling units across 3 buildings, closest to the intersection of West Patrick Street and West College Terrace. The applicant, since the workshop, the applicant has provided a shadow study based off of public comment related to concerns about the manner by which shadow would potentially encroach on abutting properties. That document has been included in the staff report packet, and it does not show substantial or significant to a degree to cause hardship or impact the quality of life of neighbors. I believe the shadows stay within the property lines. The applicant for 809 FSI is also requesting 3 modification requests, 2 for entrance separation standard relief, and then a third for relief from the requirements requiring light spillover for the abutting Gladchuck property. So they've submitted those requests for relief. The conditions of approval range from required execution and recordation of access easements with some abutting neighbors on the Gladchuck property, as well as the surface lot auto dealership at 499 West Patrick Street. There are some minor plan details that need to be revised. The applicant will need to execute an MPDU agreement. As well, the plans need the signature of registered design professionals in the state of Maryland for the landscape plan, as well as the surveyor certification. So in general, we've received not as many public so this was a case that has generated a fair amount of public comment on the proposed development. We have received a smaller volume than previous. The planning staff has transmitted up to date public comments, I believe, as of 2 p.m. today. We're very grateful for their support to achieve that. But in general, I think we've received about either 35 or 36 public comments for this, which have all been transmitted to commissioners, as well as with the update today. So in general, that I think covers all the bases right now for the 809 FSI, the terrace, and we can discuss the forest plan next if you'd like, after commissioner questions.
Okay. So you all may have noticed that I was knocked out of the meeting. I'm certainly not going to ask David to repeat all of that. I will say I came back on when you were saying about the public comment. Was there anything critical? I can certainly go back and listen to it, but as far as a conversation today, is there anything that you want to carve out and re-say now that I'm back on?
Well, no, in general, it's more of the quantity and volume has the ebb and flow. There was a large volume of public comment generated leading up to the workshop and the NAC meeting, the second NAC meeting that was held for the project. But in general, it depends on how you define critical, because with fairness to every engaged citizen that chose to offer public comment, they all offered a varied level of criticism about their concerns about the project, which, they're all valid. But I think what really matters in the long run about it is the applicant has put forth a set of proposed plans that abides by the regulations of, I believe it's Articles 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 12, that their plan has in compliance with the requirements that a plan would need to be able to be heard at the Planning Commission. I think a lot of the public comment was from an anecdotal basis, where the applicant's rationale in their statements of justification, as well as the modification request, is really based on empirical facts that they're working with in terms of the comprehensive nature of the project, height, width, depth, setbacks, parking, landscaping, environmental site design, and such. So what they have proposed is within the parameters that are required for the project to be heard at the Planning Commission on Monday. But the public had concerns, about just about everything I mentioned: parking, the volume, which is the volume of traffic generated by the site in conjunction with abutting properties, even though this is a case that needs to be judged on its merits for the case and its parameters alone, not its immediate proximity to other proposed development sites. But in general, there were just a broad spectrum of concerns that it's necessary to be involved in a public dialogue and have citizens' voices heard. But the anecdotal nature of people's concerns have a very uphill climb to overcome empirical evidence that shows, compliance with what the city expects development proposals to put forward, so they could be heard at a Planning Commission hearing.
Okay. And thank you for repeating that.
Not a problem.
Let's do a roll call. Commissioner Manalis.
Commissioner Miles, so I was just wondering, I know that Commissioner Beatty had brought up something about, and I don't have the term correct, but something about smart traffic solutions or something like that. And so I was just curious, if staff has looked at that. I know that we've talked in great lengths about all three projects, being challenging from the point of view that, when we have events or tourists or concerts or whatever, that it's going to be pretty difficult to get around town. So I was just curious, if staff has looked into that or talked to the applicant about it. I know that the applicant also made some comments about that.
So in general, to my very macro level rudimentary understanding, I'm not sure exactly Commissioner Beatty's, it's not on the forefront of my mind, and I'd be glad to follow up with him when he has his chance to speak. But the city, I do not believe, has any robust transit demand management systems in place. I know that, and Cherian can speak on it at the hearing if this is something to bring up, but I know that the city is looking at implementing a mobility fee district, which is looking at ways to mitigate and offset impacts of increase in volume of traffic and prioritize, multimodality within the downtown core of the city where we have a dense walkable environment. But I do not believe that the applicant has generated anything, but I don't think we have any requirements that would hold them to be required to produce it as part of their application outside of regular APFO roads testing based on a traffic brief from the applicant team and the analysis by traffic engineering staff.
Okay, thank you, David.
Yes, ma'am.
Anything else, Commissioner Manalis? Okay. Commissioner Beatty.
Nothing further, thank you. Oh, I see Cherian though.
Oh, Cherian popped up. Okay.
No,
Yeah.
I mean, unless you need something, and certainly I know Commissioner Beatty had kind of commented on the need for traffic management. So oftentimes that falls on special event traffic management, and this is not exclusive to an event at the school. We do have events throughout the city, whether it's Fire and Ice or events at the fairgrounds, and typically, I mean, where you get 6,000 cars a day, over the day at huge events. And so in those special cases, what typically would happen is that if there is a need for traffic control, it often is managed through FPD, through the mayor's office, and there is a process that's set up to handle those kind of special occasions. So other than the broader day-to-day traffic needs, special events are always addressed on its own. So I just wanted to put your concern to some rest and hopefully address it, that any special event, especially for maybe a football event at the school, if it is perceived as a issue that needs addressing, oftentimes it is managed separately through as a special event. We do the Summers Farm, for example, during Halloween, the pumpkin patch or something like that. So I mean, it is not just very slight. I mean, it's not we don't handle. I mean, when these special events happen, we do have a very specific plan for it and address it in a way that that allow people to move, accommodate traffic associated with that special event.
Thank you.
Okay, great. And thank you, Cherian, too. Commissioner Beatty.
Yeah, Commissioner Beatty here. I think what I was starting to my thinking was evolving had less to do with this particular property, all or the three of them, if we were considering them. My thought process was more evolving into maybe us doing a CIP proposal for smart traffic throughout the city, so that those types of things can be programmed in. And for example, there would be sensors in the road, and let's say there's a football game, and that was getting out at the same time as some other event, and the smart sensors would be embedded into the street, and it sees that there are 20 cars waiting to make a right on red, that the computer program would kick in and relieve that, et cetera. But I think that would be more of a CIP for a citywide study. It started out with this project, but I think that's how my thinking evolved. And now that I said that, I forgot what my other question was with regard to this proposal. I'm going to have to, when you get my age, I'm going to have to take a little break, and if I think about it, I'll raise my hand.
Okay. Thank you. Alderman McShane.
Thank you. No additional questions for this item.
And I actually don't have any additional questions. That brings us to the end of the agenda. Anything else from anyone? Just
I think
just for
Ron has
everybody.
his question back.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry. Yeah. Oh, now I see the hand up, and Commissioner Manalis too. But let's start with Commissioner Beatty. Things seem to be slow, and maybe it's just on my computer end.
it was a short senior moment that I had there, but the one thing that I saw as a constant in the community feedback on this project was that either the signage wasn't appropriate or didn't go up on time. I just wanted to confirm that all the public aware. I personally don't see that happening, because I know we discussed this project when it came to the historic overlay too. We certainly knew it was coming down the pike. But I just want to hear somebody from planning that the signs did go up on time. They're appropriately in appropriate areas. I just want to make sure that we deal with that today before we hear about it on Monday.
Yeah, I'm actually trying to pull up in our records right now the sign posting affidavit, but my VPN is currently running down. I know that as part of the application, though, they're required to respond within 8 calendar days of the notice to proceed. So I have, even though I'm having struggles to connect to our VPN, I say with very strong confidence that the applicant posted them as required by the statutes within the LMC.
Yeah, I walked by and I saw the signs up. I just wanted to make sure that they were put up in the appropriate time frame.
Yeah, absolutely. I can follow up with an email to the commissioners and if necessary to just document it for documentation's sake without a problem, as long as I can get back into the VPN. Thank you for your patience.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Manalis.
I have no comments or questions. I was trying to get your attention because I
Oh.
noticed that Ron was trying to say something. That was all.
Oh, yeah, I did not see the hand raised, so I think it was a delayed. So if this is all happening on my end, I do apologize.
Hey, Barb.
Yeah.
Barb, it's Jess. I just wanted
Yeah.
to answer Ron's question, so you guys didn't have to wait for an email. For the terrace project, their signs were posted on time. They actually had to be posted 15 days prior to the hearing. They were posted and they were actually posted early.
Okay, thank you, Jess, for checking it and jumping in.
Thanks, Jess.
Okay. All right, so I'm sure that Gabrielle will remind us all on Monday about this, but I believe that so going forward, we will continue to have these pre-planning commission hearing meetings in a virtual format, but starting in April, we are going back. So we'll have our April hearing back in the courthouse, and then we'll have the workshop back in the planning department. Is that correct?
I think, and we will provide you clarification before it happens, but I think we're going to be moving our workshops to the City Hall as well. One of the great advantages that have come out of COVID is televising our workshops, which is a great asset for the community to have it televised, not just the audio recording that we would post. So we want to keep that. That has been a positive of all of this. So we're initially looking at having the workshops at City Hall. The annex building does have broadcasting capabilities and such. I don't know if we'll be able to use that space, but in the immediate future, we'll have both workshop and hearing at City Hall, have it televised, available for people to watch and see and all that good stuff.
And I think I'll just make a really quick comment. It might be difficult to get parking around there, but a block away down on Court Street, there is a parking deck. So it's sometimes during the day, it's hard to find parking around City Hall.
Correct. Our parking garage will still be available, of course. You know, your the voucher cards you get, we'll still provide those for you, of course.
Great. All right. So before we sign off, any last words from anyone?
I think Ron had one more question.
Oh, geez. And I don't see it. All right.
Sorry
Beatty.
about that. Yeah,
Yeah.
Gabrielle and I had a conversation at another time about the public hearings, and I'm hoping. I've only been involved in the Planning Commission where we've done it virtual, and I have a great setup here. I have 3 screens, and I'm hoping that when we go into City Hall, we're going to have Wi-Fi access so that we can bring these things up instead of having paper and trying to. I love this setup. So if we can have that in the public forum, has that been worked out, Gabrielle? I know you were trying to.
Sure. So we will have you will have Wi-Fi capabilities if you have your own devices to bring, of course. I know Commissioner Strawson works off her iPad. She's real fancy with that. She's sending stuff all the time. I don't understand how. But the thing we were working on is trying to obtain laptops designated, not to provide you to take home or keep forever, but to have them available at the dais for your meetings so that you'd be able to log on and not have to bring your own device. So that is something we're still working on, but that's hopefully the goal.
Okay, I mean, I don't mind bringing my own device, but I'm not going to bring the 2 other screens and
monitors.
Make it seem like I have NASA headquarters, but great. Thank you.
Thank you, Gabrielle.
Yep, absolutely.
All right. Well, that concludes our meeting. So the meeting is adjourned, and we'll see you all at 6 o'clock on Monday. Have a good weekend.